The war was supposed to be clean. That's what the Galactic Accord had promised when they outlawed humanity from frontline combat 2 centuries ago. No blood, no chaos, no primitive carnage. Just drones, AI-controlled fleets, and tactical suppression. The rules were strict, and for good reason. No species wanted a repeat of the Erebus campaign. That was the last time humans were allowed on the battlefield, and it ended with the skies of planet Brathik burning for weeks, entire oceans evaporated by nuclear flame, and 3 species wiped from existence. No one talked about it anymore. Not out loud, anyway. But in the dark corners of alien diplomacy, there was a whispered saying, "If you want to win, don't call the humans. If you want everyone dead, do." And yet, here we were again. Captain Silas Wren stood at the edge of the drop bay, his armor heavy on his shoulders. He hadn't worn it in decades, not since Earth had agreed to the Passive Participation Pact. Humans could advise, train, even build weapons, but not fight. That part was clear, until now. The Zarn Dominion had broken the truce, not just once, not just by accident. They had launched a full assault on the Tricor Peace Nexus, a neutral diplomatic hub. 16 species lost ambassadors. 2 entire moons were vaporized. The Accord hesitated, arguing in endless loops about rules, sanctions, and moral boundaries. And while they hesitated, the Zarn took 3 more systems. So finally, quietly, desperately, they reached out to Earth. "Limited human deployment," the message had read. 1 battalion, no civilians, containment objective only. But Silas knew what they really meant. They didn't want containment. They wanted vengeance, or salvation, or maybe both. He turned his head slightly as the bay doors opened behind him. 10 soldiers stepped in, all silent, faces pale. They were the last of the Earthborn, trained in the old way, the kind of warfare that gave nightmares to entire planets. Most of them hadn't fought in years, but none of them had forgotten. War like that doesn't leave your blood. It just sleeps. "Wren," a gruff voice came over the comms. It was Commander Drex, a Reptary diplomat who used to spit at the sight of humans. Now he begged them. "We've lost orbital control. Their cruisers took out our defense grid. If we don't break the landing zone in the next 6 hours, they'll take Delve Prime." Silas tapped the side of his helmet. "Understood. We're en route." He didn't offer comfort, no encouragement, just cold facts. That was the human way when it came to war. No fluff, no mercy. The troopship rattled as it tore through the atmosphere of Delve Prime. The planet was scorched, dotted with plasma strikes and the twisted husks of burning ships. Silas's visor filtered the smoke, highlighting movement in the valley below. Zarn units, spiny, insect-like creatures armed with heat rifles, were crawling over the wreckage like ants swarming a dead beast. "Drop zone clear in 5, the pilot said. Silas turned to his squad. "No prisoners, no broadcasts, no survivors. Make them remember why they banned us." Then the floor opened beneath them, and they dropped like meteors. The moment his boots hit the ground, Silas felt it return. The heat, the pulse, the rage. For years they'd told him to bury it, that human aggression was a disease, that instinct was outdated, dangerous, but now it was a gift. The first Zarn didn't even scream before his body was split in half by a tungsten blade. The second had time to lift his rifle before a sonic charge burst his chest open. The rest started retreating, but they were too late. The humans weren't here to fight. They were here to unleash. Wren's HUD filled with kill confirmations. His team moved like ghosts, brutal and efficient. Every shot was a message. Every body left behind was a warning. And somewhere deep in the orbit above, alien commanders watched in silence, remembering. because the battlefield didn't forget. And neither did the humans. By the time the sun rose over Delve Prime's smoldering horizon, the valley was silent. Not silent like peace, silent like fear. Smoke curled from the charred remains of what had once been a Zarn forward base. Now it was just broken steel, severed limbs, and scorched soil. The air stank of ionized blood and melted exoskeletons. But the humans didn't flinch. They moved through the devastation with the calm of those who had seen worse. Done worse. Sergeant Marlowe stepped over a twitching Zarn cadaver and let out a low whistle. Damn, we've been grounded too long. Wren didn't answer. He stood at the edge of the ridge, scanning the eastern canyon through his visor. Movement, he said flatly. Reinforcements, 10 clicks out. How many? Too many to count. Good. Marlowe cracked his neck and reloaded. Thought they were supposed to surrender after the first hit. Isn't that how the Zarn do it? They don't know us yet, Wren said. But they will. In orbit above, aboard the Reptari flagship Unity's Roar, panic was building. Ambassador Drex watched the live combat feed with wide, unblinking eyes. How are they moving so fast? They aren't just fast, replied Admiral Sheetarn of the Kurlathi. They're deliberate. They don't waste a second. They don't hesitate. They don't care. Drex swallowed. We were told humans would act under controlled, strategic guidance. Limited engagement. Not this. This is slaughter, Sheetarn finished grimly. Drex turned away from the screen. We made a mistake. No, Sheetarn growled. The mistake was thinking we could control them. Back on the ground, the second wave hit hard. Zarn transports screeched across the canyon edge, their legs kicking up dust as they deployed fresh troops. Hundreds of them, clawed and armored. Energy blasts screamed through the air, cutting into stone and metal alike. But the humans didn't pull back. They advanced. Wren's voice crackled through the comms. Shield line, funnel them in. The humans formed a V formation, classic Terran siege tactic from the Third World Wars, forcing the Zarn into a narrow kill zone. Once they were trapped, Wren triggered the perimeter mines. Boom! Bodies flew. Black blood sprayed across the rocks. The Zarn screamed in confusion, but the humans didn't even look shaken. Their expressions were like stone, focused, emotionless, terrifying. Private Kira snapped off a shot that pierced straight through 2 enemy skulls. This is insane, she muttered. They just keep coming. They'll stop, said Corporal Rios, once they understand what we are. Wren's voice came in again. No survivors. Burn everything. I want the fear to spread faster than their orders. It wasn't a tactic. It was a statement. Later that night, in a blood-soaked clearing deep behind enemy lines, Wren stood over a captured Zarn officer, its body riddled with cuts but still breathing. Barely. It croaked something in its clicking tongue, trembling as it looked up at the human leader. Wren removed his helmet slowly, letting the alien see his eyes. Cold, unmoved. You thought we were myths, he said. Stories your ancestors told to scare hatchlings. The Zarn gurgled a response, half plea, half whimper. Wren knelt beside it. Now you remember why they banned us. Then he pulled the trigger. At the edge of the warfront, in a Zarn command chamber beneath the crust of Delve Prime, General Cuthar watched the reports pour in. The holograms showed total unit loss in multiple sectors. No survivors, no distress calls, just silence. They're not soldiers, one of his advisors whispered, horrified. They're monsters, Cuthar bared his fangs. Number worse. He turned to the central display. Footage of a lone human walking through smoke and fire, like some demon from forgotten prophecy. They're human. The sky above Delve Prime burned red, not from the sun, but from the dozens of cruisers reduced to molten debris. Ash drifted like snow over the broken wastelands, falling quietly over wreckage and corpses. The humans didn't stop to mourn. They moved through it like ghosts, silent, efficient, terrifying. But in the command tent set up in the remains of a demolished alien outpost, Silas Wren was more focused than ever. The battle hadn't ended. It had mutated. "Intel says they're rallying 2 sectors east," said Marlowe, pointing to a flickering holo map. 3 full regiments. That's 30,000 units. Mostly Zarn, but we're seeing hired mercenaries too. Slavers, deserters, even a few Krell-born mutants. "They're scared," Wren said without looking up. "They're throwing numbers at a problem they don't understand." Rios laughed bitterly. "They understand it just fine. That's why they're panicking." Private Kira, younger and still shaken despite the victories, sat polishing her rifle. Her hands trembled slightly. "Why did they ban us, sir? Really? I heard stories, but was it really that bad?" Wren's eyes hardened. "You think this is bad?" He stood, walked over to a nearby console, and brought up classified footage from a century ago. The Erebus campaign, the last human war, the one that got them kicked off the battlefield forever. The video began with grainy footage of Earth forces storming alien bunkers. Then came the orbital strikes. Not on military targets, on cities. Civilian populations wiped out in minutes. Precision nukes, neurovirus deployment, drone swarms designed to strip flesh from bone. In the background, audio captured the screams. Not of enemies, of terrified children. Entire civilizations burned in the name of victory. Kira's face turned pale. "We did that?" Wren didn't flinch. "We won." That was the truth no one liked to admit. Humanity hadn't been banned because they were weak, or unstable, or disobedient. They were banned because when humans went to war, they didn't stop at winning. They ended things. News spread like wildfire across the Galactic Accord. Human battle group flattens Delve Prime Sector. Zarn forces in full retreat. Treaty rules violated, human war crimes expected. But the most read headline was the one no diplomat dared say aloud. They're back. On the diplomatic moon of Karshai, panic set in. Ambassadors from over a dozen species gathered in a crisis chamber, arguing over the footage, over the scale of destruction, over what the hell Earth was thinking. "They lied," screamed Minister Yava of the Lortech. "They promised us restraint." "They were restrained," replied Drex grimly. "You don't know what they could have done." Shitarn stood slowly. "We made them believe they were less than what they are. But we forgot something important." "Which is?" someone snapped. The Admiral turned towards the central screen, which still showed Wren's cold face behind his battle visor. "They don't fight for conquest, or even survival. Humans fight like they're punishing the universe." Down on Delve Prime, the 3rd Zarn assault came under cover of a sulfur storm. They thought the weather would slow the humans down, fry their optics, choke their breath. It didn't. The humans fought blind, not because they had better gear, but because they didn't care. They used sound, instinct, fire. It was close combat now. Blades, blood, screams so loud they echoed across the canyons. Wren moved like death itself, every strike a lesson in why humanity had once ruled the battlefield. He took 2 hits to the chest, shrugged them off, and kept going. Marlowe lost an arm and still killed 6 Zarn before passing out. Rios walked through a burning transport just to drag out a wounded squad mate. Kira, no longer the nervous rookie, planted a det pack in the heart of the Zarn command crawler and detonated it while laughing. It wasn't madness. It was legacy. Hours later, as the storm finally cleared, a single Zarn ship limped off-world, its sole mission now to carry a message. The humans are back, and they are exactly what you feared they'd be. The escape ship landed on the outer rim colony of Gortel, crashing through its docking bay with sparks and screeching metal. The hull was half melted, its crew nearly dead from radiation and trauma. Medics rushed to help, only to recoil when they saw what was inside. The lone surviving Zarn soldier couldn't speak. His vocal sacs were ruptured, his limbs barely attached. But his eyes, those wide, blood-filmed alien eyes, told the story no one wanted to hear. They came with war reports, scrambled transmissions, footage so disturbing that the colony's defense council went into immediate lockdown. Every image told the same tale. Humans didn't just win on Delve Prime. They taught a lesson. Within days, 10 more planets declared neutrality. Entire mercenary guilds disbanded, and on the Accord's central station, the question whispered across every hall, every backdoor meeting, every sleepless chamber was the same. Who unleashed them? Silas Wren sat alone in the ruins of the enemy stronghold, helmet off, face coated in ash and blood. A cold wind swept through the shattered walls, stirring the silence left behind after victory. Not far from him, Kira crouched near a pile of destroyed Zarn drones, cleaning her rifle in silence. "Do they know yet?" she asked. Wren didn't look at her. "Who?" "The ones in orbit. The ones who sent us here, thinking we'd play nice." He took a long breath. "They'll know soon enough." Behind them, smoke still rose from where the third wave had been annihilated. No prisoners, no weapons salvaged, just charred earth and broken metal. It wasn't a battle. It was a warning carved into the planet. The squad was quiet now. Fewer jokes, fewer words, not because they were afraid, because they were remembering what it meant to be part of this, what they were. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship Eternal Consensus, Earth's diplomatic delegation sat in full silence as the Accord raged. "You violated Article 9, bellowed Ambassador Tresk of the Veladrin. "You agreed your soldiers would never be deployed for direct warfare." "They weren't deployed," said Earth's envoy calmly. "They volunteered. That's a technicality." "No," the envoy said, leaning forward. "That's humanity. You gave us a rule book. You expected us to stay tamed. And when you got desperate, you came begging for help. Now you're angry that help came with a cost." A hush fell over the chamber. Earth's representative straightened his cuffs. "You don't ban a species from war because they're weak. You ban them because they're too damn good at it." The silence was thick. Then a voice from the back spoke, slow and cold. "We should have finished Earth when we had the chance." The delegate didn't blink. "You tried, and now you remember why that was the last mistake you ever made." Back on Delve Prime, the humans were regrouping. Reinforcements were offered. Non-human allies, supplies, even orbital cannons. Wren declined most of them. "We don't need an army," he told command. "We are the weapon." Satellite scans showed enemy fleets gathering again, this time bigger, nastier, more desperate. The Zarn had rallied allies, paid off warlords, unleashed things that had no names. But none of that mattered. Marlowe, one arm replaced with a prosthetic already stained from battle, stared at the sky. "They're throwing everything at us." "They think it'll make a difference," Kira added. Wren smirked. "They still think this is about winning. It's not." "What's it about, then?" He glanced across the field of corpses. "It's about making sure no one ever forgets us again." As darkness settled once more over the battered world, one message pulsed through every Zarn transmission, encoded in fear. The humans are not soldiers. They are war, wearing skin. The Coalition called it Operation Black Dusk, the largest multi-species strike force in over a century, 80 warships, 600,000 troops, biomechs, neuroswarmers, planetary disruptors, all descending on Delve Prime with a single objective: erase the humans. It wasn't a mission. It was a mass grave in the making. At least, that's what they thought. In the War Council aboard the Zarn Dreadnought Unmaker's Will, high-ranking commanders gathered around glowing maps, each pulse showing human positions, each dot a proposed impact zone. "They're outnumbered," said General Cuthar, mandibles twitching. "Their supply lines are cut. Their reinforcements have stalled. We strike now, and we end them." Across the table, a silent Kurlathi elder leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "They won't fight to win. They'll fight to make us regret ever standing on the same ground." Cuthar hissed. "They bleed like any other." The elder looked him dead in the eyes. "You mistake bleeding for breaking." Down on Delve Prime, Silas Wren stood among his squad as the clouds shifted. It wasn't a storm this time. It was a sky full of enemy ships. "They're coming hard," said Marlowe, wiping grime from his brow. "I'm talking orbital strikes, heavy crawlers, sonic splitters, the whole damn zoo." Kira stared up at the sky, then turned to Wren. "You knew this was coming, didn't you?" "I was counting on it," he said. "Counting on being surrounded?" "Number counting on them being stupid enough to think that matters." The humans had prepared in silence. Over the past 48 hours, they'd vanished into the canyons, set traps in the riverbeds, rigged the cliffs with seismic charges. They turned Delve Prime into one giant grave, wrapped in camouflage and malice. They knew they wouldn't win by standing still. They would win by making the enemy wish they never landed. The first drop pods came fast. Sleek, armored, loaded with elite Zarn death squads. They touched ground and exploded, rigged soil, buried plasma mines, booby traps inside their own LZ. Panic spread immediately. Commanders screamed for answers. But there was only one reply. A single broadcast, hijacking every comm frequency. Silas Wren's voice. "You should have left us in peace." What followed wasn't war. It was hell. Humans struck from shadows, appearing and vanishing like nightmares. Whole squadrons were buried alive in landslides triggered by sonic bursts. Krellborn berserkers were lured into tunnels and incinerated by flamethrowers fed through air ducts. Orbital ships tried to provide cover fire, but the humans had mapped enemy satellite positions and used them to redirect their own beams into friendly units. It was sabotage with surgical cruelty. By the end of the first day, 30% of the strike force was dead. By the second, half were retreating. By the third, no one would answer comms anymore. In the wreckage of an enemy crawler, Marlowe leaned back against a twisted steel wall, blood soaking through his vest. His artificial arm sparked weakly. "You know what this is starting to feel like?" he wheezed. Kira dragged herself beside him, lip split, cheek burned. "Don't say it." "Erebus. This is Erebus all over again." Wren sat nearby, hands bloody, eyes hollow. "No," he said. "Erebus was rage. This is something worse." Kira blinked. "Worse than rage?" Wren nodded slowly. "This is clarity." As night fell on Delve Prime again, the Coalition fleet began to scatter, not because they were ordered to, but because fear has a voice, and it was speaking through the humans. Across the galaxy, quiet rebellion sparked. Neutral planets withdrew from the Accord. Mercenaries broke contracts. Even Zarn defectors began begging for protection from Earth's wrath. Because it was no longer just a battlefield. It was a message, and that message was burning itself into the stars. You should have never brought them back. 2 solar cycles after Operation Black Dusk fell apart, the Galactic Accord issued an emergency transmission. Universal alert. Human military units no longer recognizing command protocol. Stand clear. Do not engage. Do not approach. It wasn't an order. It was a warning, because the humans weren't answering calls. Not from diplomats, not from command, not even from Earth. They had gone dark. And in that silence, the galaxy finally began to understand. Humans weren't here on assignment anymore. They were here because someone let them out. In the ashes of the eastern ridge of Delve Prime, Silas Wren stood alone, overlooking a valley filled with enemy dead. The only sound was the wind, whispering across shattered armor and burned bones. Behind him, Kira limped over the rocks, one leg wrapped in synth fiber, her face hollow but hardened. "No reinforcements," she said. "Command's not even answering." Wren didn't look at her. "They're not going to." "You think they abandoned us?" "They didn't abandon us," he said flatly. "They lost control of us." He wasn't wrong. Back on Earth, global media was under lockdown. Governments argued behind closed doors. Protesters flooded streets demanding answers. Why were soldiers still active? Why weren't they being recalled? But the real question was one nobody dared speak. What if they don't want to come back? Far across the galaxy, in a hidden Accord think tank deep within the asteroid belt of Kylar Zix, 12 species gathered in desperation. All of them high command, all of them terrified. "They've decimated 5 sectors," a Vorthian analyst cried. "We estimate less than 60 human soldiers remain active on Delve Prime. 60. And yet we've lost over 200,000 combined forces." "They're not soldiers," Drex said quietly, staring at the screen. "They're something we tried to bury and forgot to fear." "We have to kill them all," snarled General Qatar. "Nuke the planet, glass the soil, we cannot let them survive." "And what do we do when Earth responds?" another asked. Qatar hesitated. We hope they don't." Drex turned to the others. "You don't get it, do you? They're not waiting for orders. Not anymore. They're not fighting for Earth. They're fighting for something older." "Which is?" Drex didn't blink. "Vengeance." That night, Wren and his unit sat in the remnants of a collapsed dropship. They didn't speak much anymore. There wasn't much to say. Marlowe was gone. Blew himself up to collapse a canyon on a Zarn crawler convoy. Rios hadn't made it out of the last blitz. His helmet still sat beside the fire, scorched and cracked. Kira cleaned her rifle with one hand and clutched her ribs with the other. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. None of them did. "Why are we still here?" she finally asked, staring into the flames. Wren didn't answer right away. He reached into his coat, pulled out a small, battered device, an old Earth datapad. No connection, just files, memories. He tapped it once, and a video played. A Zarn ship orbiting Earth, civilians screaming, fire raining down from above, and a single girl, maybe 10, running through the smoke before being vaporized in a blast. Kira's breath caught in her throat. "That was New Amsterdam," Wren said quietly. "Before the truce, before they made Earth promise to stay peaceful. We buried 1 million bodies before they even offered us a seat at the table." Kira looked at him, eyes wet now. "They made us bury our rage, bury our grief, and then they dared to act surprised when it came back up." The next day, another Zarn general surrendered. Not to Earth. Not to the Accord. To them. He approached the human camp with hands raised, head bowed, and no weapons. You win," he stammered. "We'll leave. Delve Prime is yours. Just please, stop." Wren stepped forward. "It was never about the planet." "Then what do you want?" the general cried. Wren's voice was low and final. "To make sure you never forget who we are." And then he turned away. Didn't kill him, didn't have to. The galaxy was already dying from the memory alone. Delve Prime no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like a warning. Once green continents were now blackened scars. Entire oceans had boiled dry under failed orbital strikes. From above, the planet looked as if a clawed hand had raked across its surface. The few remaining satellites showed only silence. No enemy formations, no moving fleets. Just wreckage. The humans weren't attacking anymore. They didn't need to. Now their very presence was an act of war. Far above the ruined world, a quiet emergency summit took place aboard the Accord Citadel, deep in the Lambda sector. Every major species attended, though none met each other's eyes. The room reeked of fear and sweat. "Delve Prime is dead," whispered a high-ranking official of the Yulin. "We lost over 250,000 lives, 46 billion in infrastructure, and all to stop 60 humans." 52, someone corrected. "We confirmed another 8 dead last rotation." "Does it matter?" snapped Drex, eyes bloodshot and voice fraying. "They're not a squad anymore. They're an infection." See Tarn, the old admiral who once doubted Earth, now stood shaking as he leaned against the holotable. "If this spreads, if they go beyond Delve Prime, we won't be able to contain it. Not militarily, not politically, not morally." There was a silence before the ARC ambassador spoke. Her voice was hollow. "So we bury it." "Bury what?" "The entire planet." The plan was simple in its cruelty. No more diplomacy, no more failed battles, no more warnings. The Coalition would deploy a Gravlance, a prototype doomsday weapon developed in secret, into Delve Prime's atmosphere. It would collapse the planet's gravity core and implode the world from within. No nuclear fire, no survivors, just silence. It would be ruled an accidental core destabilization, a tragic end to a brutal conflict, and it would erase the last remaining humans on the battlefield. But humans aren't known for letting plans go as expected. On Delve Prime, Silas Wren stood in the ruins of what had once been the Zarn's strongest fortress. Its walls were cracked open, and inside, the last few survivors of his squad had gathered. Kira was there, barely holding together. A few others. No medics, no supplies, just willpower and grit. Wren had intercepted the transmission hours earlier. He knew what the Coalition was about to do. "We're not leaving," he said, voice low. Kira coughed, her voice raspy. "We've already won. Let them do it. Let them bury this place. It's what they've always wanted." Wren shook his head. "We don't die quietly." She looked up at him, something flickering behind her eyes. "So what now?" Wren reached into the dirt beside him, pulled out an ancient transmitter, a relic from a time when Earth didn't ask permission to speak. He clicked it on. "This is Captain Silas Wren of Earth's last battalion. You think you can erase us. You think fire and silence will make us disappear. But here's the thing about humans. We never vanish quietly. We become stories. We become nightmares. You bury us, and we grow in the dark." He paused, looking up at the crimson sky. "Go ahead. Kill us. But understand this. Your children will wake up screaming our names, and their children will curse the day you forgot what we were." Then he dropped the transmitter and walked out of the stronghold. No one stopped him. No one could. Hours later, the Grav Lance activated. A column of white light pierced the sky. The ground cracked, the core shuddered, the skies screamed, and Delve Prime began to die. But before the planet crumbled, one last transmission escaped into deep space. The old transmitter's signal, primitive, unencrypted, raced across stars, picked up by civilian colonies, abandoned satellites, even ancient probes long thought lost. It was Wren's voice, and now the entire galaxy had heard it. Delve Prime was gone, not bombed, not scorched, not conquered, just erased. The Gravlance worked exactly as designed. The core collapsed inward, folding the planet into itself like paper under fire. No debris, no wreckage, nothing left to recover. To the public, it was ruled an accident, a core destabilization event. To the diplomats, it was a tragic consequence of prolonged warfare. To the soldiers who survived the campaign from orbit, it was something else entirely, a mass murder. But there was no one to charge, no one to blame, because the ones responsible didn't leave fingerprints, just silence. And beneath that silence, a growing fear. On a desolate listening post on the edge of Carthan space, a lone technician stared at her console, eyes wide. "Commander," she whispered, "you need to see this." Her superior leaned over her shoulder. At first he thought it was a glitch, an old Earth-style radio ping bouncing between relay stations. Static. Nothing. But then the static cleared, and Wren's voice echoed again. "You can bury a battlefield, but you cannot bury the memory of what it cost you. We are the species you banned because you feared what we could do. And now, you remember." A second later, the transmission cut. But it wasn't the only one. Across a dozen systems, similar messages began to surface. Same voice, same tone, different words, different warnings. Someone, or something, had copied Wren's last speech, fractured it, spread it across the stars. Back on Earth, chaos brewed behind locked doors. The Global Defense Council sat in stunned silence as reports rolled in from every quadrant. Pirate fleets surrendering without engagement, smugglers abandoning entire sectors, military convoys refusing to pass through any area flagged formerly human combat zone. The most dangerous weapon in the universe was now memory. An admiral slammed his fist on the table. "We told them to contain it. We told them to be careful." "They were careful," another said. "They were precise. That's the problem." The room fell quiet again. Because the truth was undeniable now. Earth didn't lose control of its soldiers. The soldiers chose to leave Earth behind. Some say Silas Wren died on Delve Prime. Others say he escaped through an old orbital launcher and now lives in the void, watching the stars he once burned. "Kira. She's a ghost story now. A whisper told to young mercs who think humanity was just another warlike race. They say she left a trail of markers across abandoned battlefields, symbols etched into stone and metal, an old Earth sigil, the ancient mark for home. The galaxy didn't understand it, but it made them afraid. 50 years later, a cargo ship crashed on the edge of a forgotten system near the wreck line of old Delve Prime. The rescue team that went in never came back, except for one. He came back without his crew, covered in blood that wasn't his, whispering the same words over and over again. They're still out there, waiting. And across the stars, in dark bars, war rooms, and prison stations, one phrase continues to echo like a curse. There's a reason humans were banned from the battlefield. Now we remember why. The sky above Karen 9 burned a sickly green. That was the color of surrender, at least to the Grell, the dominant species of this sector. It meant they had taken yet another world, another species kneeling before their might. The natives of Karen 9 were peaceful, kind, barely able to defend themselves. They believed diplomacy would save them. They were wrong. Their cries echoed through the wind tunnels of their capital, a sound like breaking glass and sobs tangled together. The Grell ships hovered in the sky like mechanical vultures, blotting out light, choking the sun, stealing hope. Their ground soldiers, 8-limbed things with metal-infused flesh, marched through the streets, burning shrines, taking prisoners, executing leaders. The message was clear. No one is coming for you. In the command chamber of the Grell mothership, Commander Vrack stood over a holographic map, talons clicking against the screen. Another world taken without resistance. Disappointing. I had hoped for a challenge. "Resistance," one of his subordinates snorted, its voice like shards grinding together. No one dares fight the Grell. They all know what happens when they do. Still, Vrax narrowed his black eyes. There's one race we've yet to crush. One that's been oddly quiet. The Terrans. Vrax nodded. Yes, the humans. A silence hung heavy in the room. Even the most arrogant of the Grell officers knew of Earth's reputation. Not technologically superior, not the oldest species, but undeniably dangerous. They didn't conquer like the Grell did. They didn't rule. But when they fought like demons crawling out of hell. They're a dying race, another officer sneered, always fighting amongst themselves. Let them rot. Vrax stared at the image of Earth on the galactic screen. Let's hope they stay asleep. But Earth wasn't asleep. Earth was watching. And when the cries from Kirin 9 reached their deep space listening stations, humanity listened. And they remembered. Remembered what it meant to be alone, to be underestimated, to be called primitive, to be colonized. The Council on Earth didn't debate long. There was no vote, no politics. Just a quiet agreement that echoed through every defense station, every underground military base, every battle-scarred veteran's heart. It's time. They sent the message to Kirin 9 through a burst signal encrypted in ancient Earth code, just 3 words long. Help is coming. But the Grell intercepted the message. And they laughed. The humans? Help? What could a dying world do? So they turned their eyes back to Kirin 9, ready to continue the purge. Until the sky changed. It didn't shimmer or scream, it didn't explode, it just cracked, like reality itself had split open, and from it came ships that didn't hum or glide. They roared, old battered warships covered in layers of mismatched metal. Some still bore the flags of Earth nations that no longer existed. The Grell couldn't understand how they even flew. They weren't sleek, they weren't pretty, but they were coming in fast. The first Grell cruiser tried to intercept. It was gone in 8 seconds. The second fell in 12, its wreckage crashing into the ocean, boiling the sea around it. And then they landed. They didn't send diplomats. They didn't broadcast warnings. They walked through fire, heavy boots, black armor scorched from past wars, helmets that reflected flame and fury, no insignias, no names. Just one word burned into the chest plate of the lead warrior. Earth. And behind them, more followed. Not just soldiers, warriors, veterans, mercenaries, outcasts. The kind of humans who didn't fit in polite society, but fit perfectly in war. They didn't fight for conquest, they fought for the ones who couldn't. And as they marched through the ash and the screams, the people of Kirin 9 looked up. And they believed. The Grell didn't understand it at first. Not just the speed of the attack, that was terrifying, yes, but the way the humans moved. They fought like they had nothing to lose, and everything to protect. It wasn't just about shooting and strategy. There was a rawness to it, something primal. When the first wave of Earth's warriors tore through the Grell's front line, they didn't stop to gloat or regroup. They kept moving, like sharks through blood-filled water. Commander Vrax watched it all from the observation deck, gripping the edge of the console hard enough to dent it. What in the black void are they made of? His second-in-command, Carrick, replied in a whisper. They are. Not like the others. We've never seen anything like this. Vrax snarled. They bleed like anyone else. Find their leaders. Cut the head off and the body dies. But that was the mistake most made with humans. There was no single head. No emperor, no hive mind, no central command. Just thousands of warriors, each trained to act independently, to improvise, to survive, and to make you pay. On the surface, a storm of fire and metal raged. The Grell used energy cannons that could vaporize stone. The humans brought railguns, high-impact kinetic rifles, and homemade explosives, brutal and imprecise, but devastatingly effective. And leading the charge was someone the Grell would never forget. Colonel Marin Shaw. Her face was hidden behind a scorched helmet, but every move she made screamed confidence earned in blood. Her armor was older than most of her squad, dented from campaigns on Mars, Titan, and Europa, but she still moved like lightning. Squad Alpha, push right. Flamers, clear those alleyways. Bravo, on me. We're cutting their throat at the center. She didn't shout like officers from other species. She barked short commands, efficient and sharp. Her voice was calm, not cold, but focused, like a blade honed to the point of splitting atoms. A young Coronian civilian, barely standing on her cracked hooves, looked up at Shaw as she passed. The girl was trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. Who are you?" Shaw stopped for only a second, turned her helmet just slightly, and replied, "Earth. We came late, but we don't leave friends behind." Then she raised her rifle and blew through a Grell-armored walker like it was made of paper. The humans were vastly outnumbered, but they didn't care. Where the Grell relied on hierarchy and careful planning, the humans brought chaos, guerrilla tactics, close-quarters combat, knives in the dark. The Grell elite, trained for structured war, couldn't adapt. One human, Corporal Te Navarro, was pinned behind a collapsed statue, blood pouring from a wound in his side. He gritted his teeth and looked to his AI-assisted targeting scope. "3 left," he growled. "Let's dance." He rose with a roar, pulling a Grell officer toward him and slamming a knife into its eye, then grabbed its weapon and used it to mow down the rest. When his own gun failed, he used fists. When fists failed, he used teeth. And when the smoke cleared, Navarro stood alone, coughing, laughing. "You bastards forgot one thing," he spat. "Humans don't quit." By nightfall, Kirin 9's capital was half liberated. Human dropships landed wherever they could, bringing more soldiers, medics, supplies. The streets glowed with fire and freedom. In one of the shattered buildings, Shaw sat on a cracked bench, helmet off, sweat running down her face. A fellow soldier, Lieutenant Griggs, lit a cigarette beside her. Griggs exhaled slowly. "Think we made a big enough entrance?" Shaw gave a tired smile. "They thought no one would come. Now they know better." Griggs nodded, eyes scanning the ruined skyline. "The Grell won't forget this. They're not supposed to." And above them, in orbit, Commander Vrax watched the horror unfold with mounting rage. His world, his order, was unraveling. The humans had not only come, they had awakened something terrifying. He turned to his fleet. "Summon the Warbringers. Earth has declared war." But Earth didn't declare war. They became it. The Grell didn't understand it at first. Not just the speed of the attack, that was terrifying, yes, but the way the humans moved. They fought like they had nothing to lose, and everything to protect. It wasn't just about shooting and strategy. There was a rawness to it, something primal. When the first wave of Earth's warriors tore through the Grell's front line, they didn't stop to gloat or regroup. They kept moving, like sharks through blood-filled water. Commander Vrax watched it all from the observation deck, gripping the edge of the console hard enough to dent it. "What in the black void are they made of?" his second-in-command, Carrick, replied in a whisper. "They are. Not like the others. We've never seen anything like this," Vrax snarled. "They bleed like anyone else. Find their leaders, cut the head off, and the body dies." But that was the mistake most made with humans. There was no single head, no emperor, no hive mind, no central command. Just thousands of warriors, each trained to act independently, to improvise, to survive, and to make you pay. On the surface, a storm of fire and metal raged. The Grell used energy cannons that could vaporize stone. The humans brought railguns, high-impact kinetic rifles, and homemade explosives, brutal and imprecise, but devastatingly effective. And leading the charge was someone the Grell would never forget. Colonel Marin Shaw. Her face was hidden behind a scorched helmet, but every move she made screamed confidence earned in blood. Her armor was older than most of her squad, dented from campaigns on Mars, Titan, and Europa. But she still moved like lightning. "Squad Alpha, push right. Flamers, clear those alleyways. Bravo, on me. We're cutting their throat at the center." She didn't shout like officers from other species. She barked short commands, efficient and sharp. Her voice was calm, not cold, but focused, like a blade honed to the point of splitting atoms. A young Coronian civilian, barely standing on her cracked hooves, looked up at Shaw as she passed. The girl was trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. Who are you?" Shaw stopped for only a second, turned her helmet just slightly, and replied, "Earth. We came late, but we don't leave friends behind." Then she raised her rifle and blew through a Grell armored walker like it was made of paper. The humans were vastly outnumbered, but they didn't care. Where the Grell relied on hierarchy and careful planning, the humans brought chaos, guerrilla tactics, close-quarters combat, knives in the dark. The Grell elite, trained for structured war, couldn't adapt. One human, Corporal Tay Navarro, was pinned behind a collapsed statue, blood pouring from a wound in his side. He gritted his teeth and looked to his AI-assisted targeting scope. "3 left," he growled. "Let's dance." He rose with a roar, pulling a Grell officer toward him and slamming a knife into its eye, then grabbed its weapon and used it to mow down the rest. When his own gun failed, he used fists. When fists failed, he used teeth. And when the smoke cleared, Navarro stood alone, coughing, laughing. "You bastards forgot one thing," he spat. "Humans don't quit." By nightfall, Kieran 9's capital was half liberated. Human dropships landed wherever they could, bringing more soldiers, medics, supplies. The streets glowed with fire and freedom. In one of the shattered buildings, Shaw sat on a cracked bench, helmet off, sweat running down her face. A fellow soldier, Lieutenant Griggs, lit a cigarette beside her. Griggs exhaled slowly. "Think we made a big enough entrance?" Shaw gave a tired smile. "They thought no one would come. Now they know better." Griggs nodded, eyes scanning the ruined skyline. "The Grell won't forget this. They're not supposed to." And above them, in orbit, Commander Vrax watched the horror unfold with mounting rage. His world, his order, was unraveling. The humans had not only come, they had awakened something terrifying. He turned to his fleet. "Summon the Warbringers. Earth has declared war, but Earth didn't declare war. They became it." In the dead hours before sunrise, Kieran 9 was quiet, but not peaceful. The air was thick with smoke, ozone, and something heavier. Fear. Not from the civilians anymore, but from the Grell. The mighty invaders who once marched through cities like gods now hid in the shadows, whispering about the ghosts in human armor, the way they moved, the way they didn't break. Commander Vrax had pulled his remaining troops back to the fortified inner districts. A ring of turrets, drones, and Grell warwalkers surrounded the last intact government stronghold. "Let them come," he said through gritted fangs. "Let the humans throw themselves into the grinder." And Earth did send more, not in the form of numbers, but in names. Names that the Grell didn't know yet, but would come to fear. One of them arrived just before dawn. His drop pod pierced the upper atmosphere like a falling god, crashing into the war zone outside the city walls. out stepped Major Elias Rourke, tall, broad-shouldered, face carved from stone and fire. His armor was custom, jet black with streaks of red, not for intimidation. Those were bloodstains that never washed out. Rourke was the man you called when all hope was lost. The last resort. They said he once fought off an alien hive using only 2 bullets, a broken shoulder and the jawbone of a fallen friend. They said he didn't die, he just got meaner. Colonel Shaw met him in the ruins of a collapsed temple, her expression tired but focused. "Didn't expect to see you, Rourke," she said. He cracked his neck. "Didn't want to come back. Earth politics was cleaner than this mess, but Command said you needed someone to break the wall." Shaw nodded once. "The Grell are dug in deep. They've mined the approach. Triple defense lines, auto turrets, and war walkers at every angle." Rourke chuckled. "Sounds like my kind of party." A silence stretched between them. Mutual respect, old scars. "You know," Shaw muttered, "they said the Grell never retreat." "Then we'll teach them how," Rourke replied, loading a fresh mag into his heavy repeater. "Pain is a better teacher than pride." Down in the city, civilians watched as more humans arrived. Not just soldiers, but engineers, combat medics, drone pilots, and off-world resistance volunteers. People who had no reason to fight, no glory to gain, but came anyway, because Earth didn't fight for reward. Earth fought for those who couldn't. In one of the makeshift hospitals, a young human medic named Aisha Rami worked tirelessly, stitching up a wounded Coronian child. Her hands shook from exhaustion, her uniform stained. But when the child opened his eyes, he didn't flinch. He whispered, "You're not like the Grell." She smiled softly. "Neither are you." And in that moment, something shifted. Hope wasn't just whispered anymore. It was growing roots. But back in orbit, the Grell's real response had arrived. From the blackness of deep space, 4 colossal ships emerged, each the size of a mountain, their surfaces covered in glowing red etchings. The Warbringers, the Grell's elite death fleet, deployed only once in 3 centuries. They didn't communicate. They didn't warn. They targeted Earth's ships immediately, and the skies burned. 2 human destroyers were torn in half within seconds. The third, UNS Nightfall, fought back, unleashing every torpedo, drone, and beam it had. It held the line long enough for hundreds of drop pods to escape. On the surface, the humans saw the glow in the atmosphere and knew what it meant. Shaw cursed under her breath. "They brought the Warbringers." Rourke just grinned, a scar splitting the corner of his mouth. "Good. It wasn't fair before." "You're insane." "I'm human." And then, all around the city, human squads moved into position. This wasn't a hit-and-run anymore. This was the real war, one that Earth didn't start, but damn sure intended to finish. The siege began before the sun had a chance to rise. The human forces moved in silence, not because they feared being heard, but because there was no need to talk. Every soldier knew their role. Every breath, every step was deliberate. These weren't reckless warriors charging into glory. They were wolves, calculating, patient, hungry. Colonel Shaw crouched behind the twisted remains of a burnt-out Grell tank, her HUD flickering with tactical readouts. The inner district was ahead, wrapped in concentric rings of defense. Energy barriers, turret nests, motion-triggered mines, and rows of Grell infantry waiting like carrion beasts. At the center was the stronghold, ugly, jagged, and pulsing with enemy power. But Earth had brought more than soldiers. They brought pain wrapped in strategy. "Rourke, status?" Shaw whispered through comms. Rourke's voice crackled back, low and steady. "Planted charges on the west generator. Give the word, and their whole defense net flickers like a dying light bulb." Shaw gave a tight smile. Words given. And like that, boom! The western wall of the district lit up with a thunderous blast. Fire, metal, and shrieking grell flew sky-high as the generator collapsed, shorting half the defense grid in one glorious burst. That was the cue. Earth's warriors surged forward, not like a uniform line, but like chaos. Some stormed head-on with shields raised and rifles blazing. Others darted through side alleys, flanking and backstabbing. Drones swooped in overhead, dropping EMP bombs and flash charges that disoriented the Grell formations. Lieutenant Griggs, chewing a stim gum and grinning like a lunatic, led a team through a sewer vent, emerging behind a turret nest. "Peekaboo, ugly," he said before dropping a plasma grenade into the Grell nest and diving for cover. The explosion sent debris flying into the sky like confetti at a funeral. The Grell were powerful, but they were built for domination, not desperation. Earth's fighters were used to desperation. It was in their blood, written into their history, tattooed across their DNA. And when the Grail's second barrier line fell, this time to a coordinated airstrike led by two half-retired Martian pilots in rusted starfighters, the enemy began to panic. Commander Vrax stood deep in the stronghold, staring at the live feed from a dozen drone eyes. One by one, the feeds cut to static, fire, or the sight of a human in black armor wiping blood from their visor. "They're breaking our perimeter," Carrick said, voice trembling. "They're not breaking it," Vrax growled. "They're eating it." He activated the final lockdown, bringing the inner sanctum into full defensive mode. 4 shield walls rose. Automated guns snapped into position. Even the corridors began to flood with a neurotoxin meant for non-Grell intruders. But he had forgotten who he was dealing with. In the sky, a single dropship screamed through the atmosphere, engines at full burn. It wasn't supposed to be there. Not on any manifest. Not scheduled for insertion. Inside was a woman with silver hair and one eye, Dr. Elia Vorn, Earth's top war engineer. She wasn't a soldier, but she was far more dangerous. She had come not to fight, but to end things. As the dropship collided with the edge of the stronghold's east wall, it detonated in a flash of blue light. Not a normal explosion, a gravity rupture bomb. Experimental tech so volatile it was banned on Earth. The east wall didn't explode. It folded in on itself, crushing half the enemy's defensive systems in one reality-warping implosion. The humans poured through the breach like blood through a wound. Major Rourke led the charge, firing twin rifles with surgical precision. He didn't scream, didn't rally. He just moved like death-wearing boots. And then the fight inside the stronghold began. Close quarters. Brutal. Screams echoed through the halls. Human blades clashed with Grell talons. Shotguns tore through armor. Explosives rocked every corridor. Rourke kicked open a sealed door and found himself face to face with a Grell warlord, nearly 8 feet tall and clad in reactive armor. The two clashed with bone-crushing force, trading blows that shook the walls. The Grell had strength, but Rourke had hate, and pain, and purpose. He drove a knife under the warlord's chest plate, twisted and whispered, "This is for Europa, you freak." When the Grell fell, Rourke stood over him, breathing hard. "All squads," Shaw called over comms. "We're in. Final sweep. Let's find Vrax." Outside, the remaining civilians of Kieran 9 watched the human banners rise above the smoke. A single word scrawled across it in old Earth script: "No one left behind." And from orbit, the Grell Warbringers began to move again. This time, retreating. Because for the first time in centuries, they were afraid. Smoke still curled through the halls of the Grell stronghold like dying breath. The screams had quieted. The gunfire slowed. But no one relaxed. Not the humans, not the Coronians, Not even the dying Grell, because every soldier who had survived more than one war knew. It's never over until you find the body. Colonel Shaw pushed through a half-collapsed corridor, her boots crunching over glass and bone. The lights above flickered. Blood, Grell, human, and something else, streaked the walls. Her squad moved behind her, tight and silent. They were deep now, beneath the stronghold, into the heart of the beast. Thermal scans are lighting up like hell below. Rourke's voice came through her comms. Something's powering up. Not more defenses? Number something bigger. Shaw clenched her jaw. All teams converge. We're not pulling out until we've got Vrax's corpse or his command corps. They pressed forward, and then came the sound. Low, pulsing, wrong. Not machinery, not weapons. A heartbeat, a deep, slow rhythm that echoed through the metal, like the fortress itself was alive. Dr. Elia Vorn's voice came over the comms, tight with urgency. "Colonel, you need to see this, now." Within minutes, the senior squad met in what looked like a control chamber. But the walls weren't metal. They were organic, pulsing, breathing. In the center was a cocoon-shaped pod, suspended in a column of blue liquid. Inside floated something horrific. "Is that Vrax?" Shaw asked. "No," Vorn said, stepping forward, her face pale. "It's something worse." The figure inside had a grille shape, but stretched, altered. Parts of its body were mechanical. Other parts were human, a human brain partially visible through a transparent skull dome. Human bones fused into its arms. "Jesus," Griggs whispered. "They've been experimenting." Vorn nodded. "It's a hybrid. They've been trying to make a warrior species, to fuse their strength with human adaptability." Rourke stepped closer. "This isn't a lab, it's a womb." "And it's nearly done growing," Vorn added. "We're not looking at a warlord. We're looking at the Grille's next evolution, one designed to beat us at our own game." Shaw raised her weapon. "Not today, it's not." But just as she pulled the trigger, the pod vanished, flickered out of existence. A hum filled the chamber. Then a voice. Vrax's voice, echoing from speakers laced into the walls. "You came too late. You think you've won. You think you've broken us. But this was never the war. This was the seeding." The ground shook. From beneath the chamber, something rumbled. Vorn cursed. "They've got a failsafe, something buried under this structure." Griggs backed away. "Please don't say planet killer." "I'm saying worse," Vorn muttered. "I'm saying it's a signal beacon, a deep space call to their core fleet. The Warbringers were just scouts. This wakes up the real monsters." Shaw didn't hesitate. "Rourke, get everyone out. We're not going to disable it? No time." "You think I'm going to run?" he growled. She stepped forward, shoved a detonator into his chest. "You're going to blow it after I get deep enough. If it's a signal, we kill it at the source." Rourke locked eyes with her. "No." Shaw didn't blink. "You don't outrank me." He hesitated, jaw tightening. "I'll hate you for this." She gave a half smile. "I know." And then she turned and ran into the tunnels alone. Behind her, the chamber shook again. Alarms screamed in alien tongues. The heartbeat was louder now, desperate, angry. Above ground, the sky split open again. A new ship entered orbit, massive, old, scarred. Not Grell. Earth. The UNS Requiem. An old flagship once thought lost in the outer void, and from its hull came a single transmission. "This is Admiral Hana Vex. Reinforcements are here, and we're bringing the wrath of a dying world." Shaw, deep underground, heard it too, and she smiled. "Let's finish this." The tunnels beneath the Grail stronghold were a maze of flesh and steel. The walls twitched, pulsed, breathed, alive with some kind of biomechanical horror. It wasn't a base anymore. It was a womb. Colonel Shaw pushed deeper, rifle raised, steps steady. The further she went, the more her comms broke apart, static eating every word. She could no longer hear her team. Couldn't even tell if the detonator in Rourke's hand would still link to the charges she carried. Didn't matter. She had one job now. Stop the beacon. End the nightmare. Behind her, the war still raged above the surface. The arrival of the UNS Requiem had changed everything. It wasn't sleek or beautiful. It was ancient. A blackened beast held together with spit, grit, and the bones of fallen comrades. But it was packed with every forbidden weapon Earth had kept hidden since the last interstellar accord. And Admiral Hannah Vex wasn't here for diplomacy. "This is Earth," she'd said across every open channel. "You attacked our allies. You tortured our people. You tried to become us, but you don't have our soul. Now we're going to burn your sickness to ash." From the Requiem's underbelly, orbital lances began to rain down like the judgment of dead gods, incinerating Grell positions, melting tanks, and cracking defensive bunkers like eggshells. In the sky, Grell warships turned to flee, only to be hunted by Earth's long-range skirmishers, pilots who'd been waiting for a fight like this their whole lives. But underground, Shaw wasn't thinking about that. She reached the central chamber. Massive, round, pulsing with crimson light. At its center stood a monolith-like spire, glowing blue. The beacon. It was humming now, louder than before, sending pulses up into the sky. Every few seconds it shimmered, distorting the air around it, and then it spoke, not in words, but in screams, voices, thousands of voices, human, Grell, Coronian. The beacon had been built with organic matter, mines harvested and fused into the signal structure. It wasn't just calling for backup, it was becoming aware. Shaw stumbled back, head spinning, blood dripping from her nose. The thing was psychic, reaching into her mind, pulling on memories. It showed her Earth burning. It showed her soldiers begging for death. It showed her failing everyone she'd ever led. And then, it made her a promise. "You don't have to die," it whispered in the voice of her dead sister. "You can become part of the new order, a commander in the next evolution. All you have to do is step into the light." Her finger hovered near the detonator on her chest. And then a voice cut through the madness. Faint, but real. "Shaw, you reading me?" Rourke, faint static, then clearer. "Don't do it. I found another way in. We can disable the power nodes. We can kill this thing together." She blinked. The beacon pulsed harder, sensing its grip slipping. "You don't need him," it hissed. "They always abandon you in the end. They always leave." And Shaw, beaten, bleeding, alone, laughed. "Yeah," she whispered. "But he came back." She lifted her rifle and fired at the nearest node. The pulse shorted. The room screamed. Up above, Vorn, Griggs, and a unit of demolition experts swarmed the tunnel's outer edge, planting backup charges. Vorn's voice echoed across her local comms. "Shaw, just hang on. We're almost synced." But it was too late. The beacon flared blinding white. The hybrid wasn't in the pod anymore. It was here, 9 feet tall, plates of armored flesh, human eyes set into a Grell skull. It moved like a demon set free from a lab of horrors. Shaw turned, breathing hard. "So, you're the future?" It smiled. "I'm what Earth could have been, if it wasn't so weak." And then it lunged. The fight was brutal, fast, messy. Shaw's armor cracked under the hybrid's blows, her shoulder dislocated. Blood poured from a wound in her side, but she moved like a soldier who'd been dying for years and just hadn't had the time to stop. She jammed a broken blade under its ribs, fired 2 shots into its throat, took a punch that knocked her 10 feet back, but still stood. And when the hybrid lunged again, Rourke arrived. He hit it with a sonic grenade, dropped down with a roar, and tackled it into the sidewall. The two struggled, fists and claws flying, until Shaw dragged herself up, bleeding and coughing. "Rourke!" she shouted. He saw her, threw the detonator. She caught it, punched the override, and stared the hybrid in its stolen human eyes. "This is Earth's answer." Then she dropped the charge, and the world erupted. Silence, heavy, total, almost holy. For a long moment after the explosion, the world just held its breath. Dust rained from the cavern ceiling like snow. Glowing fragments of the beacon drifted through the air, burning out mid-float like dying fireflies. Then came the cough. Wet, raspy, human. Colonel Shaw pushed herself up from a pile of broken stone, her body screaming in every nerve. Blood soaked the side of her face. Her vision was swimming in red. But she was alive. She blinked through the smoke, heart pounding. The beacon was gone, ripped out at the roots. The monolith had collapsed into molten slag. The walls no longer pulsed. The chamber was still. Dead. But Rourke. "Rourke!" she rasped, dragging herself forward. "Rourke, respond!" A groan answered her, then another cough. From behind a crumpled support beam, he pulled himself free, bruised and bloodied, one arm limp and hanging. "Hell of a punch," he muttered, spitting blood. "You owe me drinks." Shaw actually laughed. Short, dry, pained. "Only if we get off this rock." Above them, the tunnels began to rumble. Earth forces were drilling through the collapsed stone, their signals blinking back into her HUD. "Rescue inbound," Shaw said. "We've got maybe 5 minutes." But before Rourke could answer, a voice came through the comms. High priority, encrypted, marked urgent. "This is Admiral Vex. Immediate stand down on all orbital fire. Repeat, do not engage the incoming vessel. It's not Grell." Shaw blinked. "Not Grell?" Rourke frowned. "Another human ship?" "No," Vex replied, her voice tight, controlled. "Something else just dropped out of FTL. Old signal code. Pre-Earth Exodus." "Pre-Earth... what?" A silence followed. Then Vex said 2 words that didn't make sense. "It's Terran." Shaw's blood ran cold. "That's not possible. The Terrans are extinct. They left the galaxy 500 years ago." "Yeah," Vex said, "and now they're back." The ground above rumbled harder. Something massive was landing, just beyond the horizon. Energy readings were off the charts. Non-Grell, non-human, but familiar, like DNA buried deep in human memory. Then a transmission came across all human channels. A deep, cold voice, human in structure, but stripped of warmth. "You've declared war against genetic progression. You've destroyed a project we began long before the Grell ever existed. Earth does not speak for all of humanity anymore." Rourke's face twisted. "Who the hell are they?" Shaw's stomach dropped. "They're us, a version of us." Dr. Vorn, listening from topside, broke through. "That signal matches old colony probes, ones launched before Earth unified. They didn't die out. They evolved, alone, without us." "They think we're the broken ones," Shaw muttered. A final message came through from the Terran ship. "You were warned. Now you'll be corrected." And with that, the Terran vessel released a single object. Not a weapon, a seed. It struck the scorched center of Kieran 9's capital and began to grow. Black tendrils, metallic vines, a pulse of impossible biology winding into the cracks of the wounded world. And everywhere it touched, the Grell corpses began to change, not reanimate. Transformation. Their bodies twitched, rewired by the seed's energy, bones cracked, flesh hardened, eyes opened again, blinking with a new light. Rourke stared in horror. "They're not just calling reinforcements, they're rewriting the dead." And above it all, the Terran ship hovered like a god returning to reclaim its flock. Humanity had come to save Kieran 9. But now, another version of humanity had come to take it. Shaw had seen war. She had seen cities collapse under orbital fire, watched friends bleed out in her arms, heard the scream of a dying world crack the sky. But she had never seen anything like this. The dead didn't just rise, they evolved. Twisted Grell corpses convulsed and split open, bones reshaping under invisible blueprints, skin hardening into armored plates. Their eyes glowed a soft white. Not Grell, not human. Something else. Something programmed. Across the capital, human forces pulled back in confusion and horror as the battlefield began to change under their boots. Karen 9 itself trembled. The black seed in the center had spread its roots into the planet's crust. It pulsed like a second heartbeat, rewriting everything in its reach, biological, mechanical, even time-worn stone. On the Requiem's command deck, Admiral Vex gripped the railing, eyes wide. They're terraforming in real time, genetic warfare, tech no species should have access to. Dr. Vorn's voice came through comms, panicked. It's Terran-level manipulation. They're not just altering DNA, they're overriding evolution. They're seeding their version of perfection onto every atom. On the surface, Shaw and Rourke stood side by side, backs to the ruins, facing the rising wave of hybrid horrors. More of the transformed Grell were emerging, limbs clicking into place, muscles grown over nanofiber bones. They were fast, efficient, void of emotion. They're not soldiers, Rourke muttered. They're tools. They're warnings, Shaw said, gripping her rifle. This isn't war. This is a message. The Terran ship still loomed above, silent and unmoving, and then a smaller vessel detached from its underbelly and descended, sleek, black, and humming with alien calm. It landed just outside the city, where the dead Grell had fallen silent in rows, as if awaiting orders. From its belly emerged a figure, humanoid, human-sized, but wrong. Perfect posture, skin too smooth, eyes too still, not armored, not armed, just exact. It walked toward Shaw and Rourke as if it had all the time in the galaxy. When it stopped 10 feet away, it spoke in flawless Earth standard. I am Prime Representative Helix of the Terran Ascendancy. You've interfered with a controlled restoration. You've destroyed property vital to the future of our species. Shaw stepped forward, teeth clenched. You call that property? Helix blinked slowly. It was potential. You discarded it out of fear. You're reanimating corpses. We are preserving usable design, upcycling inefficiency. And you're doing it on a world that asked us for help, Shaw snapped. You weren't invited. You hijacked the Grail's invasion, hijacked the whole damn species. Helix tilted its head. We offered them continuity. They chose extinction. Rourke raised his rifle. You came here to threaten Earth? Helix's expression didn't change. We came to offer correction. You've deviated too far. Violence, decay, tribalism. We are returning humanity to its optimal form, unity, precision, purpose. You mean control. We mean survival. At that, the ground began to crack again. The seed was spreading further. Vines tore through the soil like knives, wrapping buildings, converting them into metal-organic hybrids. Skies darkened as weather began to shift unnaturally fast. Then the real threat came. From orbit, 5 more Terran ships decloaked, each larger than the last, each brimming with more seeds. Vex's voice came through, sharp. They're preparing full-scale overwrite. If they drop all 5, Karen 9 is gone, and Earth is next. Shaw looked at Helix, something dark and ancient stirring behind her eyes. Then I guess we remind you of something you forgot. Helix paused. And what is that? She raised her weapon, no fear, no hesitation. That real humans? We don't evolve through control. We evolve through resistance. And with that she fired, straight into Helix's synthetic chest. The shot didn't kill him, but it triggered everything. The Grell hybrids surged forward. The Terran ship began charging weapons. Above, the Requiem repositioned, deploying its final arsenal. Project Black Rain, an illegal kinetic bombardment system banned after the Pluto Accords. Earth hadn't used it in 100 years. But today, all bets were off. "Target the seed," Vex commanded. "Kill it, even if it takes the whole damn planet." "Approved," Shaw said into her comms, pulling Rourke back as the storm of war began again. All over Kieran 9, humans rallied. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were the line. Engineers with hammers, medics with pistols, pilots crashing broken ships into enemy hives. And one by one, they pushed the Terran tide back. Not with better tech, not with evolved minds, but with the one thing Earth had always had, that no clone, no AI, no programmed being could ever replicate: free will. In the final moments, the Requiem's cannon lit the skies. A single round, heavier than a city, screaming toward the seed. Shaw looked up, Rourke beside her, both knowing this could be the end. And she whispered, "This is for the ones who had no voice." Impact, white light, silence again, and when the dust cleared, the seed was gone. The hybrids were dead. The Terran ship was retreating, its cloak failing, systems failing, underestimating Earth's madness for one last time. Kieran 9 was broken, but free. And Earth had reminded the stars, "You don't fix humanity, you survive it."